My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours. We're a music podcast that chats to artists, musicians and creatives on their songwriting craft and upcoming projects. I'm your host Simon Fink and welcome to episode 256. We're back once again with another episode this week with the lovely pop wonderkind, flowerkid. The pop songwriter has returned with his first piece of new music since 2021 in the form of brand new single, Dis and Disappoint. Now don't forget to check out the show notes of this episode as they'll contain all the links where you can find flowerkid's socials and music as well as our socials. Make sure you head to our Insta, TikTok, YouTube and follow along and that you subscribe to the pod on whatever lovely podcast application that you use. As mentioned before, our guest today is flowerkid. The indie pop project of musician and songwriter Flynn Sant burst onto the scene almost out of nowhere back in 2018 and went on to release songs like Boy with the Winfields and the Wild Heart and Vodka Orange Juice. He released his debut EP, Everyone Has a Breaking Point, in 2021 and cemented his position as one of Australia's most exciting young pop songwriters. Last month, flowerkid returned with the brilliant single Dis and Disappoint and has joined us on the pod to chat about this first piece of new music for the year. In today's episode, we discuss the songwriting of the single and what originally inspired the track. We talk about how flowerkid's honesty in lyrics came about and why it seems to resonate with people so well. We also discuss diversity within the music industry and why songwriting from marginalised communities does seem to be coming more to the forefront and resonating with audiences more. And we also maybe try and discuss or try and get a few secrets out of flowerkid and what the rest of the year holds for him. As I mentioned earlier, all of flowerkid's details can be found within the show notes of today's podcast episode. And we do want to thank Thomas and Lucy from Warner Music Australia for their help with today's episode. Here is our conversation with flowerkid. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, flowerkid. Hello, how are you?
Hi, how are you going? I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today.
It's not a problem. Happy to be here.
Where are you joining us from today?
I'm actually in Newcastle at my mum's house with my sisters. So if you hear any background noise, that's what it is.
No, look, I can very much appreciate that. I'm also I am recording from home today, and there's a small dog and someone else in the house as well, so we might be in the same boat.
There we go. Yep.
It's a very exciting time at the moment. There is a brand new single out from your flowerkid project. It is Dis and Disappointment. Firstly, congratulations on this brand new single.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing to make, and to see it flourish is just incredible.
100%. How are you with this? Is not the first piece of music you've dropped. There was some previous singles and an EP, which I'll touch on in a little bit. But how are you when it comes to each release and each kind of brand new thing being released out into the public?
Well, I get very nervous prior to the release, just to, think about what other people are going to think, whether or not I'm articulating it in the right way. I get very nervous, but once it is out, I do feel a sense of relief. And I think that, it's very rewarding, to see it out in the world.
100%. This is the first piece of new music that we're getting from you since I think I want to say 2021 with the previous EP.
The EP, yeah, that is true. That is true.
How has it been, I guess, in that time? Because we're now in 2023. Guess what's been going on in between that time, and what made it right to release this single now in where we are in May 2023?
Well, I think it takes me in general a lot of time to process my emotions and, collect all of those feelings and, make them into something that means something. I think that, as it takes me a little bit longer to do that, I went through a lot during 2022. I ended quite a serious relationship. I started new things. I moved to several places. And it's been a long time, but I'm ready to get kicking and back into it again. So, yeah.
That is very exciting. I know that there is quite a bit of excitement around you and your project and your music in general, but I feel that like this news of a brand new single is going to kind of even make those fans that little bit happier and into, I don't want to say hyperdrive, but there's always excitement, and this will push them over the edge slightly.
Well, I hope so.
I'm curious. I know this song you wrote in Nashville with Alex Hope, who is a producer and songwriter. I believe he's worked with the likes of Tegan and Sarah and Troye Sivan.
That's right.
What was the process of writing this song kind of like, and where did the original inspiration for Dis and Disappoint come from?
Well, I guess if I go back to a previous relationship I had, it kind of ended on a sour note, I think. And it took me a long time to process those emotions. In fact, like more than a year to really, really think about it and sit down with those feelings. And I guess I took it to Alex Hope. I took the idea and said I was how I was feeling, and they were very, very supportive of how I was feeling. And I said one sentence, and I said, just frankly, I'm just disappointed in how the situation was handled after the breakup. And we wrote it in a day. We made it in a day, the first demo. And I felt so relieved because I was able to get those emotions out that I'd been holding in for a year and a bit. Yeah. So it was very rewarding for sure.
Are you someone who, and I want to touch on your kind of vulnerable and honest songwriting in a little bit anyway, but when it comes to working with someone with collaboration, do you find it easy? Do you find it an easy process to be able to songwrite with someone?
Usually, yes, actually. I tend to, when I am by myself and I am writing on my own, I find it hard to finish things, and I start new ideas and then I don't finish them for another few months, if at all, to be honest. There's lots of ideas that I've just started. But when I am in the room with someone like-minded, I tend to just knuckle down and we work together and we bounce ideas off of each other, and it just flourishes into something within a day usually, which is pretty incredible. I'm pretty proud of it. Yeah.
100%. I think that, as you said, there's a lot of songwriters who might be going through a similar thing of yourself, where we start something and it kind of loses its legs by the end of it, in a way.
That's right.
A notebook full of ideas, but not fully formed or finished songs. So I think, if you can get it done in a day, very impressive.
Thank you.
With something like this, I guess the world and the music community seem to have fallen in love with flowerkid and with your music over the last, 4 to 5 years, I think now, or 3 to 4 years, or I apologize for the timeline, but
that's okay.
The last number of years that you have been releasing music have really resonated with people, and I feel that is due to your honesty and vulnerability in lyrics. And I guess with that, and then we might even do it in reverse. We'll get to how you started songwriting later, but has this been something that you've always done in the same kind of fashion, in the sense of, we've spoken to so many songwriters about being honest and vulnerable, and how many had to overcome certain hurdles to get to a point where they were comfortable. And it seems that you've kind of come out the gate being so honest and real that I'm really curious whether that was always kind of, that's how it worked for yourself, or whether that was something that you worked on to get to that point.
I definitely was very shy growing up, actually, and I didn't really speak too much. And over the years, as you said, yes, I did go through a lot of hurdles, and I had to overcome a lot of challenging situations that someone my age generally didn't, tend to experience, I guess, that early on. And it made me really look into myself, and I found that all of those emotions had been built up over such a long period of time. I was always an honest person. I always had no problem being vulnerable to people that I cared about. But it got to the point where I had all these emotions and I needed an outlet. And then when I started music, I started out with a bang. And I wrote Late Night Therapy and Boy with the Winfields and the Wild Heart. And I would say that some of my most vulnerable pieces yet. And I definitely think that it took a long time to get to that point. But once I did, I felt that it was the right thing to do and the right way to simply just help other people as well as helping myself in the process. Yeah.
Of course. I love that. That gave me chills on my arm. When you, and if you're okay to talk about it, please let me know. If you would not like to, and more than happy to change the subject. I guess in relation to that, how did you come across music as that outlet? Because I can imagine it could have been any range of creative form that outlet was going to take. What was it about music or songwriting that kind of worked?
Well, I think in my mind, I always heard melodies and pieces, and I was always very, very good at creative writing and, making stories and narratives that just really resonated with me and other people. And I definitely would say that music really drew me in because the music made you feel that narrative even more. It was like a soundtrack to that story. And that's what I found really magical about it. I really enjoyed the soundtracks behind movies and songs. I would really feel songs to a whole nother level, as like lyric wise and music wise. I was just drawn to it in that way, I guess. A music to narrate the story as the story is narrating itself, if that makes sense. Yeah.
It does. I love that. Do you remember the first song you wrote? We don't have to go through the specifics of it, because for some artists that we've spoken to, it is some have been embarrassing, so we don't have to share it. But do you remember the first kind of song that you tried writing?
This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Why doesn't eHarmony allow copy and paste in first messages? Because you are unique, and your conversations should reflect that. eHarmony wants you to find someone who will get you. How are you going to know who gets you? If people send you the same generic conversation starters they message everyone else. Conversations that actually help you get to know each other. Imagine that. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
I remember really like early on, I wrote a song about a race and reaching the finish line. And it was really deep. And, I was in like year 4 or something like that. And, it was about society and everything like that. And I guess you can have an idea of how that sounded like, but, that I remember writing that, but I guess the first proper song that I wrote fully and, was proud of was Late Night Therapy. And then following shortly after, Boy with the Winfields and the Wild Heart. Yeah.
That's very impressive. I feel like a number of people kind of go through quite a substantial amount of works in progress, if you will, till they get to something that is of substantial quality. So that's very impressive.
Thank you.
With, I guess with that kind of story in mind, your normal creative process, even now, is it that you're a lyrics person first, or are you a kind of melody person, or how does that kind of, when inspiration does hit, how does that kind of play out?
It completely varies. it never starts in the same way. Sometimes it starts with a melody in my head and I'm like, ooh, and I play it on the piano or something like that. Or I start with production in Logic Pro, or I start writing lyrics or start writing paragraphs or sentences that can be made into lyrics. There's several different types of ways that I do it. And I like it because it keeps me on my toes. It's, good practice that I can start from practically anywhere and get to the result that I get to. Yeah.
Of course. I know before we spoke about collaboration, has there ever been any desire or thought to songwrite for other people?
Absolutely. I'm actually starting to do that now. And I really, really enjoy it. I had the pleasure of joining Song Hub's Pride Edition this year. And I started writing for other people during that experience. And I thought, I really, really like this. I would ask them their story and what they felt like they needed to express or let out. And then writing that and forming it into song form was just magical to me. I thought that, it's a great experience, I believe. Yeah.
I love that, firstly, that there is opportunity to that, and that also that Song Hub is putting on something like a Pride Edition to be able to have, as you said before, like-minded songwriters and musicians and creatives who can use that to not use it to, but use it almost as a platform, if you will, to be able to help tell these stories.
That's right.
Yeah. Is it important, and this might be a very silly question, but is it important for yourself to be able to shine a spotlight on those stories and those creatives that maybe are in not necessarily a minority, but might not have an opportunity to have a bigger spotlight than some of those other kind of artists that we see come through?
I absolutely think it's so important. As you said, sometimes that people like us, we don't get that platform and we don't get that recognition just because we are seen as different. And I think it is so important to hear these stories because they're the most impactful ones, in my opinion, going through struggles, going through hardships, and sharing them with each other. And then also there's this universal struggle that I think a lot of people go through, and I don't think you have to necessarily be queer to experience that, but I think that the most impactful stories these days are coming from queer writers and queer creators. And I think we can really, really help the world and, try and make it a better place. Definitely.
100%. We've previously in the last few months, or over the last number of years, but especially in the last few months, we've spoken to a number of artists about well, a number of those artists have been from the queer community or have been an artist of colour, and it is, I think that there is so much more to be heard from these communities, and I feel like that, and I realise I say this as in the position of a straight white man, but I think that the narrative of a straight white man is somewhat boring these days. We've heard all the stories. There are no new stories to tell. It is good to be hearing these other stories. People don't grow, as you kind of said before, is that what were we talking about? We were talking about songwriting and wanting to grow and evolve. And I think that is a key part of it, is hearing these stories from these other communities.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to know, and I know that I don't want to get yourself into trouble or myself into trouble. Obviously, as we mentioned, it is the first piece of new music since 2021. It's a brand new single. Can we possibly expect any other music this year?
Absolutely. There's a lot in the works, and a lot has already been finished and just waiting to be released. And I can't wait to share that. Yeah.
That's very exciting. I won't push for details. I will ask, because it's always fun kind of knowing all the secrets and being able to hold on to them. Are you good with keeping secrets?
I'm pretty good at keeping secrets. Yeah.
Yeah. That is very exciting. It will, I guess, in terms of not talking about new music, can we expect some possibly to see you in some live capacity as well this year? I think, did you just recently come back from South by Southwest?
I actually was going to South by Southwest, but we ran into a few complications in terms of getting over there and funding and everything like that. But in terms of live performance this year, nothing's planned as of yet. But I can definitely say that I'm sure things will pop up during the year, and at the end of the year / at the beginning of next year, there is something big going on for sure.
Look, that's very exciting. We won't push for any further details on that. Do you enjoy being in the live space and in a kind of having the project in a live capacity?
Well, it can be very daunting, but I definitely love it when I'm there and when I can see people singing along to the songs and enjoying themselves. I definitely think it's worth it for sure.
Well, I have heard many positive reviews from a number of people actually in relation to your live show. So I look forward to whatever those things at the end of the year may be. I look forward to seeing what they are and being able to experience it for myself. Flynn,
I'm glad.
We would usually ask our guests what they're currently listening to. Is there anything at the moment that is kind of on high rotation for yourself?
I'd say Brockhampton is always on high rotation for me. Particularly the album Iridescence, in love with that album. And yeah, I'd say that's my something that's on repeat for me all the time. So that's what I'm vibing with at the moment.
That's awesome. How do you usually come across new music? Are you someone who listens to friends' recommendations? Are you an algorithm person? What's your kind of music discovery? A
bit of everything, really. Sometimes I'll hear it, a friend playing it while we're hanging out or something. I'm like, what is this song? This is brilliant. Or, I see it in a Spotify playlist, or I hear it in a TikTok, of course. But yeah, just a bit of everything, really.
I think that's the best way to do it. Very quickly, just because you mentioned it, what do you kind of make of I hate this word, so I'm so sorry, the TikTokification of music, and how it turns musicians into content creators and kind of vice versa?
I think there are a lot of positives and a few negatives. And I think lots of people do say this. I think the only problem that I have with TikTok is that there is so many musicians coming out of the woodwork, which is fantastic in so many ways. But I think people are seeing it and viewing it as a competition as to who gets the most amount of likes who gets the most amount of views. I guess it's the same as any social media, really. But in the positives, as I said, so many are coming forward with these brilliant talents that wouldn't have been discovered before this kind of platform. So I think that it's giving people, and minorities essentially as well, opportunities to really put their best foot forward, I think. Yeah.
100%. I feel like it's a somewhat double-edged sword because, as you mentioned, you can find all these incredibly new talents on there, but there's a small percentage, I'd say, not all of them, but a small percentage that seem to view it as, yes, somewhat of a competition or almost somewhat of more of the business side of it, which I feel takes the creative and actual music side out of it completely.
That's right. There is a downside to that, for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit weird to end on that note, but thank you for talking TikTok with me.
No worries.
Ben, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast. I do appreciate it. It is the brand new single from flowerkid. It is Dis and Disappointment, and it is out now. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
The most powerful designer drugs are the digital ones we use daily. And we get high off them. When touch, tap, like, scroll at a time. You know, just like tech creators want us to. Use digital without digital using you. Learn more at sync.ithra.com.